Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Chris Yonker, who is an author, speaker, and executive performance coach. Welcome to the program, Chris.
Thank you.
Hey, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to become an executive performance coach, because I think in the world of coaching, there's a lot of facets that you can focus on, and if you focus on too many, then, that's not a good thing. So why did you pick executive performance?
Great question. So I basically, if you look at my background and followed me, I was actually a kid who went to the library back in high school, and I was buying books like Shad Helmstedter's What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, which is probably looking back on it a bit odd to do when you're 14, 15 years old. But one thing that I linked right away is that the better I got, the easier things in my life became. So I had this interest in the side of development for my whole lifetime. And it started about 25 years ago, about 25 years ago, when I started my path of career with 3M at the time, and I was working at this division, and in essence, this advice my father had gave me, which was the best advice he ever gave me, is he said, Chris, if you really want to be good at what you're doing, you need to find a mentor. So I pursued and found one. And I found this guy who was one of the top producers, asked him if he'd mentor me. He said he would, and he gave me a bunch of audios. He gave me a book, and then he said, "Hey, just call me every week, and we'll give you advice." And so I followed his advice for about 2 years, and I found myself at the top of the sales organization. And I'm like, "Wow, this is pretty fascinating." And then as time went on, people would come to me and ask me for advice, and I started this throughout that career. I did a lot of mentoring and coaching, and about 10 years ago, I started doing consulting, working with small to medium-sized businesses, with the CEOs, and really helping them around the sales process and how to refine that, scale it, and align sales and marketing, because that was really my background. And what I found, though, is as we'd go in and I worked with this other consultant, we'd give advice, is that a good majority of the time, whatever would be employed would not be permanent. Somehow, some way, things would shift back, and it was I realized it was the culture and the environment and the beliefs and the constructs of the leader and the leadership, and what was kind of sewn into the organization. And until that could be changed, permanent behavior was not going to get realigned. So I'm like, wow, this is pretty big stuff. And at about that time, I started studying neuro-linguistic programming and got certified as a practitioner, which is, in essence, what that is the science of behavior change. So that's kind of how I ended up to where I'm at. And now today, my emphasis and focus is specifically on working with CEOs and their executive teams.
I love that intro, because it really just solidifies the fact that so many of us have these paths that we've taken that have made us who we are today, and you need to recognize that. And you had a mentor before you knew what that M word was. You didn't necessarily know you should get a mentor, go find one, but you were just kind of doing something, and then you followed some advice, and then realized, hey, that's kind of working out pretty well. Interesting, you made the point about you would recommend some change, and when the changes were made, they weren't permanent. Well, the win was they actually listened and did some activity and implemented your recommendations to make a change, so that's a huge win. But then I love the aspect of the permanent behavior, because I know in my corporate career, you would have your boss go out to a seminar and come back, and all these changes, and we'd kind of roll our eyes and then just say, wait 2 weeks, and then he'll be off on some other tangent, and that's the way that it worked. Well, I think that's kind of hardwired in organizations, and that's probably what you recognize to go, okay, if we're going to stop the bleeding, really, we need more than just this Band-Aid. We need to stop what's causing the bleeding, right?
Right, exactly. Yep.
So with the NLP, do you find that when the CEOs, when you're kind of coming in at the first step saying, I'm noticing these changes need to be made. We need to make sure they're permanent. Here's the things that we're going to need to address. Do you find any resistance when, A, with any of the recommendations, but B, with your methods to, help them make sure that they're permanent?
Yeah, that's a great question. It typically comes down to is what specifically is holding that course. And people don't do things by accident. So there's a reason why things are happening in an organization and with a leadership team. And what I want to find out is what are the beliefs and paradigms, or I'll call them the illusions, of the executive team that are causing the behavior. People do things to go towards something or away from something else. Typically, folks follow the path of least resistance. So what's being created in that environment that's holding that up? And I like to go to the source of that to shift that. And in essence, it's going to be aligning and changing how we look at how things are or aren't. And that once we can make those shifts, then things naturally roll out accordingly to the new model of the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes people don't know what they don't know, so once you bring that to their awareness, then it kind of makes sense to them, right? Have you seen that a lot as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can think of an organization, this happened actually, two organizations, service-based, and there was not they didn't have 100% alignment with the results that they said that they wanted in their service, and they had a very strict, stringent protocol of what someone would do when they did the job. So it was not like, do I know what to do? Do I know what's a good job? I mean, it's a checklist. It's pretty black and white. But the compliance was really low. So it's like, we need them. They're like, it's an education problem. We need to tell people that we need to do a better job telling them. Or it's it's a motivation problem. We got to use a bigger carrot or a bigger stick. And oftentimes this isn't the problem. What I found was through that work is that as I interviewed people, there was a paradigm that there wasn't enough time based upon the scheduling to get the job done. And as long as they believed that there wasn't enough time, they were going to rush and they weren't going to get all things done. And until we could, in some cases that was true, and in many cases it wasn't, but regardless, until we could get that paradigm changed, we were fighting against ourselves.
And if you'd used a carrot or actually, if you'd used either the carrot or stick, but let's talk about the stick for a second, then they would have been like, fine, I'll do it. So check, and they would have just gone through and glossed over these things, and they would not have been done, well, or if the way that it needed to be done to then push it to the next step so that the next person on the team could pick it up. I was just talking yesterday to a client yesterday about, they feel like they've got all these balls in the air juggling, but if one of them drops or gets disrupted or loses attention, now all the balls can fall down. And so I think the interesting point with that is you could feel like, well, let's just have a nice carrot to pull them, into why, let's talk about the why. Or, if you don't do this, here's this stick that's going to happen. Well, that wasn't the problem. The problem was we ain't got no time to do it, and if you force us to do it, it's going to get done. You're going to see check marks, but then the result, the foundation there isn't what you want to build on.
Exactly.
That's pretty intuitive because I think a lot of executives might have gone, thank you, Chris, you fixed our problem. We got all the check marks now. And then 6 months later, it's like, well, doggone. Something still is not right. So the question is, you as a consultant saw something they didn't because you were from the outside looking in, and you saw kind of a constraint where, you could have fixed it this way, and it might have been a fix or a Band-Aid, and they might have checked the boxes off, but down the road they might have realized it wasn't the right foundation to build on because you noticed it was that time constraint. So can you speak a little bit to how that consultant can see things that from the inside they might not see because they're too close to the problem?
Yeah, great. And there's some type of adage that says, you can't read the label of a bottle from the inside. And oftentimes, folks are blind to really what's going on. And as you said, you have to kind of get in and, a constraint or some type of, I'm constantly looking for resistance. I mean, this even happens in succession plans when you get a CEO who is looking to move on to the next thing, and he wants to maybe sell his business, or it's a family-owned operation. I've done several of those. And the most important thing with those is really getting clarity in where they want to go next. Because if part of them doesn't want to break away, right? Part of them doesn't know who they would be without their company or their business or their life that looks that way. They're going to sabotage the process. It's going to be derailed. And we don't even know that we're doing it until we can create clarity in what specifically it is that is holding us back and remove it so we can naturally go to where we want to go.
Yeah, and I love that, because if you were to say to that person you're thinking of, here's 3 questions, fill in the blanks, what is your clarity, what is your why, things like that, I have a feeling that sometimes people would say, I have no clue. So that's where that outside perspective comes in. And I know that you have, in the coaching and consulting world, there's plenty of choices. So what do you think that you would give some advice to someone when they're thinking, okay, I finally realize I think I need to look into, selecting a coach or a consultant, but I'm lost. So what do you think that you would give some advice on things to look for and some tips on selecting a coach?
Sure, that's great. Well, my theory or model is that I think there's a lot of great people to hire and that are available, and there's some that aren't so great. And so obviously you want to interview, and I would suggest finding people that have worked with someone before around a result that you want. If you can find someone who's helped someone get a result that you're looking for, then that's a good sign that there's somebody here that can help you. And the thing I look at is what the process looks like. What exactly is it? I mean, if they're just looking to hold you accountable and help you with your, I'll use finger quotes, discipline, I would say don't waste your time in many cases because you're just trying to override something. Find someone who's going to help you get to the root of why you're behaving the way that you do. You don't want someone that's going to install a shock collar on you and hit the button every time you don't do what you say, and then help build you up every other call. It's like going to a therapist, and not against therapy at all, but that sometimes can happen in that loop. And what you're really looking to do is someone, and it does not necessarily be someone you like. Some people go, I'm going to hire someone that I like, that I really dig. Well, a really good coach is going to tell you things that you probably don't want to hear. Right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I've said this to many people a lot of times, which is if you want really good advice on a question or a business or an idea, don't go to the people that you know are going to be, your best buddies and pat you on the back and say, that's awesome. Because I think the easy part is just to go, ooh, hey, what do you think about starting this business? And you talk to all your best friends, they're like, you rock, you're awesome. And in reality, you want to go to someone to go, wait a minute here, have you looked at this aspect? So, yeah, to your point, you want someone that's not going to be your rah-rah cheerleader. You want someone that's going to go, hold up, you didn't do this from last time, and this is causing a potential issue, and let's address this. Or did you realize that you're reacting this way, and you should be responding that way? So love that. That's a huge, huge piece. On your website, you're very clear that you are into martial arts, and I'm sure you integrate that into your consulting and coaching. And I know that one of the things you talk about is work-life balance, which could be a fallacy. When I saw those 2 points, I wonder, I know just enough about martial arts to get in trouble, but I know that balance, if you're off balance and you throw a punch or you're getting punched, if you're not balanced and sturdy, there's a problem, right? Because someone that's off balance, you've got them on the ground really quickly. Well, same thing with work and life and business. If you're out of balance, I'm sure there's a lot of analogies we can go that way. So can you speak to kind of the work-life balance fallacy?
Sure. That's a great question. So, I believe that everything that we look at, everything we decide is built on our paradigm or belief about what is or what isn't. And personal balance is really a personal definition. There's a lot of people that say, it doesn't exist, you're chasing something that's elusive. Well, how do they know what your definition of that is? So, I mean, I'm really challenged by that one. And today it's a level of integration, but there's a few things we need to look at. From the martial arts perspective, yeah, balance is really important. You have to own your center constantly in battle, if you will. And you're going to be off balance quite a bit. Every time you transition from a stance to a stance, you kick, you're sacrificing potential balance and transitioning ownership of balance from one point to another. The idea is to maintain balance and congruity 100% of the time, but that's not realistic in a fight. It's not going to happen. You're going to get off balance. So instead of training to say, you know what, I'm going to just train to stay balanced all the time. No, train to know what balance is and own that. Whatever being centered means, even in the analogy of life, it's okay, for me to be centered, I got to have rest, I've got to have proper nutrition, I got to have water, I've got to be meditating. I mean, I've got a certain list of things for me that I know if I'm spending quality time with my family, I'm thinking the right things, I'm starting the day with gratitude. There's a certain semblance of things for me that I know keeps me centered, keeps me connected, and keeps me whole. But also, I've got to train that when I do lose my balance, which is going to happen, I've got to get it back and close the window down. So now my training becomes, how fast can I get my students to take the window of when they, or even clients, of when they come off balance to when they own it back and continue to collapse time so that window is minimized.
Yeah, I think that's I think too many people gloss over work-life balance, and you need to have, and A, that is not feasible many times, but B, I think people don't want to recognize that things get out of balance. So here's a trigger to let you know what will be happening in your life when you start to get off balance, so you don't get off too much course. And B, here's then what to do once you start noticing these triggers. Let's get you right back on center, because it's going to happen. Too bad, so sad, and deal with it. And I think that's a huge, huge piece. So let's wrap up with, what's the best way that people can reach out to you and learn more about your coaching and consulting, and maybe connect with you?
Yeah, great. My website, chrisyonker.com, is www.chrisyonker.com is my website to go to, and that's Chris, CHRIS at chrisyonker.com is my email, and that would be another way to connect with me there. And I want to mention, can I mention one other quick thing?
Oh, yeah, certainly.
And this is probably the most important thing I can say is, as I go and speak around, and I ask people if they have clarity in what they want. Whether I work with people in succession plans, or I work with people and come and say, hey, I want to get my life balanced, or my business owns me, or I need to improve the organizational health of my business. Regardless, it all starts with one thing, and it's, what do you really want? What's your clear picture? And I ask people, do you want to be happy? Do you want to have joy? Do you want to have peace? Do you want to, contribute? And everyone will raise their hand. And then I ask everyone, what percentage of you are actively working on a vision, a written vision, that has clarity around what you really want? Write it out. Has it written, and you're working on it. We talk about working on your business, not just in your business. I'm talking about now working on your life instead of always being in your life. Mm-hmm. And very few people raise their hands. And yet they're intelligent people.
Yeah.
And so the last thing I'd like to say is I would challenge people out there listening is what do you get one life. This is it. There really isn't anything more important in your life. What's going to make you happy? What's going to make you whole? What's going to provide fulfillment? What's going to allow you to contribute and have peace? And who do you need to become, and what do you need to do to own that ongoingly so you can enjoy the journey more?
I love it. I think that, most people spend more time planning their vacation than their life. We've heard that analogy before, and your example about getting clear on that, what brings you happiness, what is your why, what is your clarity, and then work on those things, because otherwise, what gets measured gets done, and what doesn't get measured doesn't get done by antithesis. So huge, huge piece there. Love your thoughts, and thank you so much for your time, Chris. It was wonderful getting to know you, and make sure that your website is in the call link.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.